In 7th grade, I experienced my first true taste of embarrassment. Happened during PE class, which was my very favorite time of day because I've always loved sports, I've always been very active, and I always wanted to beat all of the boys. On this particular day, we were going to play flag football. Now, flag football is a lot like regular football, but with an element of tag. So you wear these belts around your waist with fabric flowing off of them, and instead of being tackled, you just pull the belt off of your opponents. Now, if your belt gets pulled, play stops and has to be reset. Now, I grew up in a very normal suburb of Salt Lake City, Utah, and went to a public school. And we didn't have uniforms of any kind, neither traditional or sport uniforms. So it was left up to us to decide what we wanted to wear for physical education class. And I remember going with my mom to a sporting goods store and picking out what I thought were the coolest Nike sweatpants. They happened to be warm-up pants, so the ones with the buttons down the side that you would wear maybe warming up for basketball, so that once you're done with your warm-up, you would just pull them off and start play. Now, with that little bit of information, you might already be seeing what exactly went wrong for me. So, on this particular day, we started playing. It was going great. I was feeling good, feeling confident, making plays, just loving life. And I got a perfect pass from a teammate, and I was streaking towards the goal line. And about 20 yards from the goal line, I was hit from the right by an opponent, and he pulled my flag. Now, he pulled pretty high up on the flag, and I think he also grabbed a handful of my pants. So the pants did exactly what they were designed to do, and they tore off. So I must also say that at this time in my life, I had a bit of an aversion to underwear. I know, TMI. But it just leaves you to realize that I took streaking towards the goal line to a very literal level that day. Very embarrassing. First, the next thing I remember was girls piling on top of me to try to cover me up, which is a gesture I still very much appreciate to this day. But it was too late. Everybody either saw it or heard the boys screaming, "Game over," embarrassment happened. Now, this happened to me during a time of my youth and anybody's youth where I would argue is very important for the development of your identity, self-esteem, and when you begin to start worrying what your peers think of you. This made me wonder what could be done to prevent this from happening at all. And I believe the solution is uniformity in the form of proper athletic attire. I believe that schools should provide physical education uniforms for their students and that these uniforms should be designed to promote movement, comfort, and safety while being physically active. I believe that anybody with religious belief, these uniforms should be adapted to help support those beliefs. And most importantly, I believe that this policy should be implemented and funded by the government in schools from middle school to high school. I also believe that proper changing rooms should be provided to be inclusive of all children, all gender identities, and that the varying levels of comfort about changing clothes around your peers should be addressed by offering options in terms of where and how you change for gym class. I believe this is possible, and I believe that it would very greatly change the comfort level of all children around physical education. Now, the debate around school uniforms is very heated, both traditional uniforms and school uniforms, but I'd like to just focus on physical education uniforms and the problems and causes that my proposed policy aims to address. Now, lack of uniforms can be problematic for many reasons beyond my own pantsing incident. I believe that leaving physical education dress code up to students can become a safety issue, can provide anxiety for LGBT plus or non-binary children, and also limit participation in those who just do not have access to attire that helps them to move freely. These problems can cause children to feel uncomfortable, left out, and leave them with a negative feeling towards physical education and activity as a whole. And this negative connection could stick with them through their entire life. I think the root causes of these problems are socioeconomic differences, the inability to make the right clothing choices, say for financial reasons, like above, and discomfort that children feel around changing rooms and changing around these peers. Each of these causes is worth exploring as we tie them into my solution. So cause number one, one of the top causes of children having the inappropriate clothing for physical education has to do with socioeconomic differences between families. In an article on classroom.com, Jessica Cook lists this as the number one deterrent to any school implementing a policy of dress code, whether tradition or sport. And it's for good reason. I think a parent's inability to provide proper clothing for physical activity because of financial difficulty is a real problem, and I do not believe this burden should be placed upon them to fix. I believe physical activity uniforms should be federally mandated and paid for by the government. A large portion of state and local taxes that we pay go to the school districts in the area that you live in. However, only 10% of federal funding goes to education nationwide. This is an entirely different issue that I believe needs serious course correction. However, I don't think it's unrealistic to factor the cost of PE uniforms into the percentage of federal funding that education already receives. Now, another cause, and a big cause, of clothing issues around physical education and a pushback to implementing it has to do with the uncomfort of children around changing rooms. This is an issue I can completely understand and very much sympathize with. Changing around your peers can be very uncomfortable, especially for students with different gender identities, religious beliefs, or those who just feel self-conscious about their bodies for other reasons, which we've all been teens, we've all felt that discomfort. Now, an article on K-12 Dive discusses the pros and cons of physical activity uniforms in terms of hygiene, safety, and inclusivity. All of the points in this article culminate in the need to adapt our current thinking around changing rooms for children in order to implement physical activity uniforms in a positive way. This is why I believe that changing room aspect of my policy is particularly important. In order to require uniforms, you're requiring children to change before and after class, and so in order for them to feel comfortable, they need the proper changing rooms and a place where they feel safe to do so. Historically, changing rooms have been a problem nationwide because they force children to change basically in an open room. And while for some this may be normal, for others it can be completely horrifying. This is why I believe that proper changing rooms should be provided and be inclusive of all children, all gender identities, and that a varying level of comfort around changing clothes around your peers should be addressed by offering different options in terms of where and how you change for gym class. This could look like the inclusion of gender-neutral locker rooms with enough changing stalls for children to cycle in and out of to change before class in complete privacy. Again, I believe that the funding for this should come from the government as a part of my policy around physical education uniforms. Now, while my pantsing incident didn't completely hinder my love of sport and activity, it very well could have. And I can see how an incident of unsafe activity, injury, or embarrassment due to impractical clothing could leave a student with a lifelong aversion to it. I strongly believe that a well-thought-out policy around federally mandated and funded implementation of physical education uniforms, as well as providing safe and inclusive changing rooms, could positively change the way that children experience physical education. Taking part in and enjoying physical activity at a young age can greatly contribute to your love of activity in adulthood and promote a more healthy lifestyle. My hope with this policy is that all children can be provided with the environment they need to enjoy physical education without financial, social, or experiential burden. Thank you.